Hi, everybody, and welcome to Connect and Thrive Live. I'm Crystal Hobbs of Reflective Marketing, and every Friday we connect you with amazing entrepreneurs and experts so your business can thrive. And today I am thrilled to have Mary Jane Cox here with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you, Crystal.
Yeah, so Mary Jane is the phone lady, and today we're going to get into why you should be using the phone and a couple tips on how to do so. So I have the phone book with me.
Nice.
And I've been reading it. You can see my dog ears, so
great.
But yeah, I've just found it like some really good tactical tips in there, especially, a lot of us are afraid of using the phone, myself included. So I found this really, really helpful. And I think everybody watching here today will learn a bit more about how to use the phone for business. So those of you watching, I know a few of you are tuning in here live now. So if you know someone who could benefit from this interview, please hit the share button on Facebook. We love to spread this out there. And Mary Jane, maybe you could start and tell us a little bit about you and how your business started.
Sure, that's one of my favorite stories. So this is actually my 30th year as an entrepreneur. So I started my first business way back in 1987, and a big part of growing that business was learning how to sell on the phone. I'd been a journalist prior to that, and really thought my phone skills would be great in business because I'd done a lot of interviews over the phone as a journalist. But when it actually came to building the business, it was a disaster. So I had to step back very quickly, and I started recording myself on the phone in very early days of that first business and analyzing what was happening in the call. And in the 14 years I ran that business, I continued to do that. I recorded myself and my salespeople and really worked hard at understanding the psychology of a phone conversation. So fast forward, when I sold my shares in that business, I took a bit of time off and helped a friend build his software business. And when it was time to leave and get a job, he said, no, you need to start another business. You need to teach people what you know about talking on the phone. And I was surprised. I didn't really think it was a business, but I gave it a shot, and that was 11 years ago. And I get to walk through life as the phone lady, and my focus is inspiring conversation on the phone. How do we do that? How do we get to know our prospects better, our customers better, so that we can serve?
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I'd heard so many great things about you from other people and from your workshops that you've done with Propel ICT. So I think everybody watching here today is getting a real treat. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess let's start out with, why should we use the phone? What impact do you think the phone can have that maybe online channels or other methods don't meet?
Sure. Let's start with a really practical example. It won't apply to everybody listening, but it's a great practical example. Many people probably read the story about MacEwan College in Saskatchewan and the fact that they were defrauded for $11.8 million. And this was money that was owed to a construction company they'd worked with for years and years and years. But they received an email in their accounts payable department saying that, and it looked exactly the same as one coming from that construction company, saying that they had changed their banking information and could the next payments please go to this bank account. And so they did that. They didn't question the email because it looked identical. They didn't pick up the phone. to verify the information. So $11.8 million went to an account in Montreal and was quickly transferred to Hong Kong. And it's very doubtful they'll see it back. It's very doubtful the construction company will see it back. A phone call to verify a piece of information like that is essential.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about that, the role of the phone is to allow us to hear someone's tone of voice. So there's many things that we can say in an email. I'm sure everyone that's watching, and yourself included, has misinterpreted an email message at some time. You have read something into it that wasn't there, or somebody did that to you. You sent them an email and they misinterpreted what you had to say. So that's where the sound of our voices comes into play. But even more deeply, with the startups I work with, for example, they need to do discovery calls.
Right.
Now, when you're talking to a prospect, what you're trying to do is help them talk about a problem they're trying to solve. And they may not even know they have the problem. So sending them an email survey is not going to help them uncover the problem. Right. Only conversation can do that. So those are some examples of where the phone is the most powerful tool.
Great. And for those of you watching, how many of you are afraid of picking up the phone? Just go ahead and say yes or no in the comments. Always like to get a feel for where people are at with it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I guess a big theme that I really took out of your book was that everyone is busy and overwhelmed. And I really liked all the tips that you gave about, constantly keeping that in mind. So how would you recommend that we be a little bit more considerate of other people's time when we do hop on the phone?
Great. Perfect question. So, yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge for phone communication today is definitely time. And we want to then, when we are calling anyone, whether we know them or they're a prospect, is we want to let them know right away what the reason for our call is.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite all right if I call you to say, hi, Crystal, how are you? Because we know each other. Right. And we can spend a bit of time there, but very close to the front end. Within the first 30 to 40 seconds, I want to say, I'm calling you today to talk about this.
Right.
Because then you're in a position to say to me, oh, I do want to talk to you about that, but I'm about to start Facebook Live. Could we maybe have this conversation in an hour and a half? Or, or you'll say, yeah, I have time to talk about that. So today, time for many people is more valuable than money. And for all of us, it's certainly as valuable as money. So when we show respect for someone's time, they will give us their attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, and I always really like that idea of not ignoring the elephant on the telephone, as you call it as well. So if you can hear someone's, there's a lot going on in the background that, maybe you can say, is this really the best time? Or yeah. So I see Kylie here says that, I'll show that up there. She's not at all nervous on the phone or doesn't avoid it. And it's key to their business to better engage employers. So good to know, Kylie. That's awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Sorry. And when it comes to calling someone because you want to do business with them and you don't necessarily know them, I know a lot of us have some real negative connotations when it comes to cold calling.
We do.
So how would you go about calling someone you don't know?
Okay, I'm going to start in a different place, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did have a call from an entrepreneur yesterday who was thinking of hiring me to do some coaching and a lifetime of anxiety on the phone. And when you are prospecting, and I'll call it that just because everybody hates the phrase cold calling.
Yeah.
When you're talking to strangers, on behalf of your business, what I really want to say is that that first call is not a sales call. I doubt there's anybody on watching today that has a product or service that they know they can sell in one phone call.
Mm-hmm.
That's not who we are as entrepreneurs.
Right.
So that first call is a research call, and you should regard it as that you are phoning to talk to them about their business, to see if you have a product or a service that can help them with their business. Maybe you can't. Maybe, there's so many reasons, or maybe this is not the right time for them, but part of our intimidation and our anxiety comes from the fact that we think we have to get on and have a specific conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
We have to sell. We have to get a client. And you don't have to. What you have to do, though, is get to know your marketplace. So no matter who you speak to or what their answer is, you're going to learn more about your marketplace and your potential clients and what they need, what they're looking for, what trends are in their industry, all of those things. Did I answer your question, or did I ramble?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely answers it. But if so say I'm like, okay, I'm going to call this person.
Yeah.
How should that conversation go? What do I want to? I don't want to say, hi, how are you?
No, you don't. So when we're talking to strangers, first of all, the biggest lesson I mentioned earlier about starting that first business and it being a disaster at the beginning. And I was 29 at the time and calling CEOs and VPs. So the first thing I always did was I said, it's Mary Jane Cops and I'm just calling. Mm-hmm. And when I listened to the first recording of that, I realized, what they are hearing is that I'm just calling. I don't have a reason for my call. I'm just sitting here dialing phone numbers. And we want to be cautious of that, especially of that word just, because it implies there's no value to the call. So you want to get rid of that. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to ask someone you don't know about their health, because that labels you a telemarketer right away, that you're trying to sell something. And you don't want to say, is this a good time? And I get a lot of pushback about this, mm-hmm. but in today's world, there is no good time for any of us to receive an unexpected call from someone we don't know.
Right, yeah.
So instead, as you mentioned earlier, you want to say, or listen, and if you hear a meeting going on, saying, it sounds like you're in a meeting.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just get started. Say, hi, Crystal, it's Mary Jane Cops calling from the phone lady. And the reason for my call today is I understand you're building a business there, and I'm wondering about the time you're spending on the phone. I coach entrepreneurs to succeed in their cold calling, and I'm wondering what is your current success ratio on your cold calls?
I love that. That is a great template.
It's a little bit rough, but the idea is to make that first 20 seconds about them, to say, I know you're an entrepreneur, I know you're on the phone, as opposed to talking about me. Because if I'm successful in inspiring conversation, I will have lots of time to talk about myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those of you watching, you should write that down, make note of how to do that, because it's a difficult thing, especially if it's not something you're used to.
Well, that's right. You need a really good open-ended question instead of saying, are you making cold calls? That's not going to inspire a conversation. I need to be able to say something like, what is your success ratio with your cold calls? So that you have to tell me something, and then you're agreeing to conversation.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. So we're also happy to take any questions from the audience. So if you have a question about using the phone, go ahead and put that in the comments, and we'll definitely take some time to answer that. I also wanted to talk about your online course. So I always think it's very interesting to get a peek behind the business and give our viewers some insights on what other people are doing. So why was it that you decided to create a course, and how did that process happen?
Well, I know that the work I'm doing is of value to entrepreneurs worldwide.
Right.
There'll be different cultural things happening in different countries, but basically, I have so many requests that it's difficult at times to meet my client's timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get the information out to as many people as possible, because this is about communication, and this is about entrepreneurs succeeding. And I love when that happens. So the first platform I played with was Udemy. And that course is still there. It wasn't as successful for me as I wanted it to be. And by that, I mean, it's not interactive. So you post the course, but you actually don't have access to the people's email addresses or a method of communicating with them.
Right.
So that isn't where I live. I really like connecting with my students, my clients, whatever we want to call them. So I'm now in the process, and it's taking longer than I want, but now in the process of creating something on Thinkific. If people aren't familiar, it's somewhat the same as Teachable, and it will be interactive, and I'll be able to create community there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. And that's really good insights, to know that that's some of the downfalls with something like Udemy, or it's that process, I think, that a lot of us are afraid to try something. And I love that, even though it wasn't really a good fit for you, that you learned from that, and now you can find a better platform for that.
Exactly.
Okay. Hello. I see Denise is on here. Hi, Denise. And we have Robin and Amanda and Kylie. Great to see you guys on here. If you're enjoying this, please share it out. And of course, we're happy to take your questions as well. All right. And Mary Jane, how can we learn more about you?
Well, the best thing, I think, is to follow my blog. So again, I think because of the journalism background, I started blogging in 2009. And I had a weekly column in my life, so I decided to blog weekly. So there's, first of all, a lot of information there on all those weekly blogs. But it's also where I talk in my voice, like it is me that's talking on that blog. Once in a while, I do have guest bloggers, and I love to have guest bloggers. But it isn't, there's good tips in there. There's good stories in there, and that's how you can certainly get to know me better, is by reading that blog.
Perfect. All right, so we've got the link there in the comments. So if you're watching, definitely check out Mary Jane's blog there. All right, so if we have some questions come in after the fact, I'll be sure that Mary Jane sees them. Great. And otherwise, thank you all for tuning in. And Mary Jane, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing some tips on how to use the phone for your business.
Thank you, Crystal, for inviting me. I'm very, very pleased.
Of course. Awesome. So thanks, guys, and we will see you next Friday.
Yes, bye.
Bye.